Last week's Baldur's Gate video was doing really well. It was doing even better than that video about Zelda that was doing really well until YouTube slapped an age restriction on it and ruined the views. Last week's Baldur's Gate 3 video had an age restriction slapped on it that ruined its views. Thanks, YouTube. It was yet another one of their mistakes that has been rectified after the damage was done. And I'm at a point where if I'm gonna get age rated, regardless, in an arbitrary fashion, for no good reason, I might as well get them out. There's no harm done to me. So here you are, enjoy it, they're finally out. My Boglins are finally out! Right, we're doing a video on Baldur's Gate 3 again. Sort of, it's related. Enjoy!
Excuse me, waitress. I do not like these livers and onionses.
Well, too bad. You ordered these livers and onionses, and you have to eat them.
No! Oh, if only I could be rescued from the consequences of my actions. I will save yous. I am here to save yous from those livers and onionses. Behold, there's my power. I am beholding. Okay then, let's see. Open the menu, load the save, and there we go.
What will you have today?
I'll have the paschettis with meat cubes.
That's an excellent choice.
My choice was excellent, thank you. All in a day's wake. Enjoy your breakfast. But it's dinner time. Oh, that's embarrassing. 1 second. Enjoy your dinner. Thank you. I will. Wink.
Save scumming. A practice underhanded, ignoble and shameful by name, but in practice, let's face it, we've all bloody done it at some point or other, haven't we? Don't pretend you haven't save scummed more than once in your lifetime, no matter how hardcore a gamer you think you are. You can sit there, you big tough guy game bro, looking all haughty with your arms folded, snorting in derision, but who are you fooling, really? What's your performative indignance achieving even? It's just you sat there, alone, watching this on your phone surrounded by your plastic statues of slasher movie murderers depicted as big titty anime girls. Admit it, you don't just save scum, you are save scum. You're a dirty, pathetic, nasty little puddle of save scumming filth, aren't you? You crawling littles. Sorry. Been practicing doing Dom videos for when the whole games media thing inevitably dries up, and I'm starting to develop quite a habit. Sorry about that. You worms. Shut up, Craig, I wouldn't make zero money. Save scumming, if you're unaware, is the practice of saving your game before you attempt something risky or face a major challenge, with the intent of reloading the save should anything go wrong. Depending on who you ask, it's either poor form that goes against the spirit of the experience or a valuable tool as valid as any other in the box. With Baldur's Gate 3 being the topic du jour in games media and a game I'm keen on desperately mining for content until I've hit the fucking bedrock, because last week's video looked to be the most successful one I've had in years before YouTube stepped in to explicitly fuck it over with what it's yet again called a mistake, but I prefer to call a pattern of abusive transgressions of its own stated community standards, it seems a good time to discuss a topic that has seen spirited discussion in the wake of Larian's role-playing triumph. And it has been spirited, it's not been like fucking nasty, at least not that I've seen. But there's time. I mean, we're talking about it on YouTube now, so it's only a matter of time.
Can't believe you did it, you stupid idiot!
The Baldur's Gate 3 subreddit is awash with people admitting their save scumming, protecting their party from potentially ruinous outcomes by saving the game before dramatic dice rolls, difficult combats, and conversations with important people. A recent Polygon article came out in defense of the practice, with Nicole Clark boldly proclaiming claiming, "I absolutely will not take accountability for my actions," and calling save scumming the best way to play RPGs. Even before seeing recent debates this week, I've been pondering the subject. On the last episode of the Jimquisition's sister podcast Podquisition, I openly admitted to having save scummed on occasion with Baldur's Gate 3, and we had a chat about when it's appropriate, saying it's at least fine for regular fights that have no story bearing. As far as more important fights and decisions, well, that's part of the complexity when it comes to considering save scumming for a game like Baldur's Gate 3. An RPG involving big decisions and lasting consequences based on a tabletop game where everything you say or do cannot be unsaid or undone. One of the most impressive things about Larian's faithful production is that your decisions carry genuine weight to them thanks to the vast array of dramatic outcomes that range from whether or not an NPC is friendly to whether or not a valued party member dies and stays friggin' dead for the remainder of the campaign. We've come a long way from the days of Quantic Dream pretending there are lasting consequences for overly scripted pantomimes where you can fuck up as much as you like and almost never alter the ultimate outcome because those games only really had one story, and it was the story that couldn't afford your screw-ups. Lol. Baldur's Gate 3 is, of course, based on Dungeons & Dragons, a tabletop game in which you pointedly can't save because it's, well, not a video game and it doesn't have save slots. Unless your campaign's being run by an exceedingly generous DM who'll let you try again should you fail, but if such a DM has ever existed, I sure as shit ain't met them. What I have met are DMs who fucking love to make players live with the consequences of their actions, or, as is more often the case, the consequences of dice rolls that severely fuck them over. The very first Dungeons & Dragons campaign I ever played, my fighter, Vox, lost his hand. It fucking sucked. Now, he later acquired a magical hand to replace it, one that could cause fear in those it gripped, and that was pretty cool for Vox, since Vox was a wanker. Well, it was cool until he lost his fucking foot in the Tomb of Horrors. Luckily, our esteemed cleric hit upon the bright idea of creating a new, stronger foot for Vox. Unluckily, he made that foot out of fucking stone and grafted it on without consideration for the fact it halved my fighter's movement speed and just looked really, really fucking stupid. I can't quite recall if this sequence of events occurred before or after Vox lost an eye. I also can't say I was having the best run of it by the end, not when I was supposed to dive into the fray of battle with a sword and shield, but I had one ghost hand, was moving 15 foot per turn, and I had no goddamn depth perception. Vox eventually fell to a mirror image of himself that, if I recall correctly, had all of his body parts intact, and that was after a series of fights that just got progressively worse and worse. Our cleric tried to raise him back from the dead. The thing about resurrection is that the character has to want to return. After all the shit he'd been through, Vox elected to just stay fucking dead. And who can blame him? As a regular ideator, all I can say is mood. I'd been wanting to try my hand at the Brigand class anyway. We were playing an adaptation of Kingdoms of Calamar, you see, and so I rolled up my new character, a charming charlatan called Mercy, who played sorta like a rogue, with skills based around charisma and deception. Sadly, we were at a point in the game where we were fighting a ton of undead who were immune to pretty much everything Mercy could do, and, well, let's just say that bards are awesome, and third time was a charm. Now, as an overview, this is all quite funny. On a session-to-session basis, though, it wasn't fun. The risk of shitty consequences can certainly make dice rolls tense and give gravitas to the game you're playing, but the problem with them is that they're shitty. And you're stuck with them. If you're ultimately playing to have fun, feeling forced to play while having an objectively shit time is quite the contradiction. Now, I'm not arguing that my Dungeons & Dragons campaign should have allowed for saving before rolling the dice, but what I am saying is that locking players into their decisions can be just as much a risk for the game as it can be for the gamer. If a game railroads players down a path where they're feeling significantly less entertained by something they expected to be entertaining, there's an argument to be made that the game failed in its primary objective, at least if being entertaining is the primary objective, and I do think Baldur's Gate was made with fun predominantly in mind.
Yep.
It absolutely grinds my gears anytime I fail a die roll that my character has proficiency in, argues Nicole Clark's article on save scumming. Like if Karlach fails to turn a wheel because she fails a strength check, or if Shadowheart fails to persuade a follower of Shah, or if my druid character, with great nature and animal handling stats, fails to win over an owlbear looking for refuge. If I design my character to be proficient, then they better achieve their one goal, especially Astarion a walking lockpick. I do not play games for their fidelity to real life. I play games to cause strategic chaos, and I will simply save and try time and time again until I get that outcome. Many games, especially on PC, have allowed for manual saving at any point, and it's an allowance that is either abused or merely used according to an individual player's own preferences and, of course, the given game's context insofar as its content, genre, and intent of its developers. Dark Souls, for example, is explicitly designed to stop players from erecting such safety nets, constantly saving over one file as you play in order to lock you into every decision you make. Every attack, every step, every success, and every mistake is a commitment. It's not just part of the challenge, it's part of the atmosphere of every game From Software makes. Disco Elysium can at times quite cleverly, and sometimes cruelly, hold on to the consequences of a decision until long after it's made, so not even saving will save you. One of the most memorable parts of the game for me was finding out that a conversation I'd had at the beginning, where I was being a real sleazy piece of shit to someone because I thought it was funny, had a horrible fucking effect on that person to such a degree it sent my character into a subsequent pit of despair that resulted in a game over. It was just so smartly, so harshly done, turning a moment of comedy into something dark and holding on to that revelation for fucking hours. Of course, the game wasn't rendered completely unwinnable since I could save, and I could just not initiate that particular conversation again until my character was better equipped to handle the fallout, but goddamn was it brutal. Some adventure games back in the day weren't so much narratively brilliant about that kind of thing, instead electing to just be massive by quite explicitly rendering games completely unwinnable based on player decisions, but letting them continue playing for hours before finding out they'd been doomed. This was one of the calling cards of Sierra's old point and clicks, and honestly, I can't say I ever thought that was actually good game design. While I'm sure the developers thought they were being brilliant and outsmarting their audience, they were really just being sadistic and demoralizing. I'll say one thing in defense of Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, at least it's honest about the fact it just wants to hurt its players. Most games these days aren't interested in damning their players to misery. Over the years, checkpoints and save stations have become much more generous. And as we already noted, manual saving at any time has been common on PC since PC gaming was a thing. Fucking casual PC gamers. For most video games, this discussion isn't even worth having since either death's a slap on the wrist already, or the decisions found within aren't so important as to merit a treatise on the ethics of scumming. I mean, I'm playing Atlas Fallen at the same time I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3, and as far as that thing goes, who fucking cares? So what do you reckon?
No.
Hot new look?
No.
What do you mean no?
I mean terms of service.
The terms of service, my arse. They're just gonna slap an age rating on it, remember? So it's fine. This could be a hot new trend. Boglin bras.
Claudia can see you from where they're sitting. How do you think the lobster feels?
Boglins. She's happy with it. Look, it's a good look. It's a good look. Now, I think I made it pretty clear last week that I think Baldur's Gate 3 is a special fucking game, an admirable experience for not just its faithfulness to the tabletop experience, but in its excellent writing and characterization and the sheer nosebleed-inducing variety of results for the things players say and do. And I think that absolutely does merit a thoughtful discussion on how appropriate it is to save before rolling the bones. Let's get one thing out of the way. This ain't about gamer pride. I don't give a rat's ass about save scumming from a hardcore gamer perspective, and whether it makes you hardcore or not if you throw caution to the wind. Let's leave such cringe-inducing talk of pride as a gamer to Naoki Yoshida and the insecure embarrassments among the capital G gamer crowd who whine about casuals and think installing mods on Sekiro cheats not only the game but yourself. fuck that shit. I consider myself a pragmatist in many ways, and while I adhere to my own strong sense of ethics, I'm not above taking shortcuts in life if they're harmless enough. My favourite character in Game of Thrones, oh my god, do you remember Game of Thrones? Is the sellsword, Bronn. Loved him in the books too, largely for his character establishing moment best summed up with this exchange.
You don't fight with honor.
No. He did.
I don't put much stock in playing a video game with honour, especially a PvE experience where my opposition is just lines of fucking code. It's for this reason I'm also a big defender of cheesing, exploiting flaws in a game or using overpowered and imbalanced tools to get ahead. When I first played Demon's Souls back in the day, I absolutely took advantage of the Flame Lurker's balked AI to get him stuck on that bit of bone in the environment so I could pummel him safely at a distance, and he had to just stand there and fucking take it. Take it like the little subby bitch that he is. Oh, that fight actually informed the way I approached Soulsborne games from that point forward, a philosophy I've often been keen to bring up when it comes to whether or not cheesy tactics are acceptable in such games. As far as I'm concerned, the Souls games are built to exploit every mistake you make, every flaw in your strategy, and punish you for them. Its game design is ruthless, merciless, so why shouldn't the player respond in kind? If the Flame Lurker is too boneheaded to walk around an obstacle, make him pay for the error. If your projectiles can take a dangerous monster's health to 0 at such range it doesn't turn hostile in response, seize the freebie! This ain't sports. This is war, damn it, and it's war against made-up things like goblins and dragons that aren't even really there. Fuck 'em! Returning back to Baldur's Gate, games like that are different, you could say. Far more story-based, there is a case to be made that you are cheating yourself out of an experience somewhat by not sticking to the game's guns and taking the results of your rolls on the chin, for good or ill, because consequences are part and parcel of the game. Indeed, like with Disco Elysium, some of my favourite moments in Baldur's Gate 3 that I won't share for spoiler consideration came about from choices I made that had very much cemented a grave impact on my party. Hell, I've been downright surprised by how unflinchingly Baldur's Gate 3 will upend the table and change course based on situational developments. As a result, part of the enjoyment for me has been considering who to align with, who to believe, and which option to pick when given conflicting choices that could set me on a path of revelry or ruin. A post by Redditor Holds Colon offers a useful perspective. I used to do that in other games, including games by Larian, but this is the first game I actually don't. The first time I can kinda get into the role play. I think the big one for me is just being shown the die roll and all the modifiers. It's much easier to accept failure if you can see the 14 total for a DC of 15, instead of just having it show you 25% chance you failed. I only reload when I get a total party wipe. From a role-playing perspective, obeying the dice is a worthy endeavour. At the same time though, yes, I have save scummed with Baldur's Gate 3 on regular occasions for a number of reasons. For example, if Karlach were to die for good, I'd consider that a total party wipe in and of itself because, you know, it's fucking Karlach and without her, I am nothing! But certainly I'll save before a huge and tough battle, and I'll reload it should it turn disastrous at any point. I'll keep a save slot open for mid-battle too if a hard fight is particularly lengthy and I just don't feel like going through it all over again. I'll save before trying to disarm traps because I don't consider them particularly enjoyable role-playing experiences. In the tabletop game, where the DM can come up with unique outcomes and the rest of the party can laugh at the exasperation of their rogue player, traps can be neat. But if you've seen one exploding loot chest in BG3, you've seen them all. Big whoop, not bothered. As far as conversations go, that's a mixed bag. As a baseline, I certainly intend each time to stick to what happens, but I nonetheless save before pivotal dialogue, most notably when I'm gonna need persuasion checks. This is partially for the same reasons as Polygon's writer. I can be a sore loser too, and I rolled a half-elf bard dick girl for whom persuasion, deception and intimidation rolls are supposed to be the bread and butter. I'll get especially annoyed if I've not only failed on persuasion, but spent several inspiration or luck rolls and still failed, so there's a good shot I'll give in to my annoyance and start the scene been over. There have also been times where during a conversation I've been given an opportunity to see something particularly interesting and cool and wanted to avoid disappointment by missing out on it thanks to a random dice roll. The owlbear Nicole mentioned is one such example of me reloading to get the desired outcome. Last night I was at a point in the game where I could piecemeal convince a character to kill all of his subordinates and then himself. I successfully got him to do the former but failed the latter. That I let stand, because I'd already achieved something cool and I quite liked the way that made the ensuing fight feel when I failed at the last hurdle. That was neat, and that really is the point, is it not? Getting the neat experience. I aim to stick to the lasting consequences by default because it's a neat concept, and most of the time it's fun to experience. Sometimes before a conversation, I will commit to not save scumming it just for some self-imposed tension. And that's a decision that I get to have control over as a player. Losing a party member I wasn't using due to a high drama scene is fucking cool. Having to fight a big fuck off devil because you failed to trick him can be quite a thrill. Some outcomes, however, are like Vox getting stuck with and stuck to a huge stone foot. It's taken an enjoyable thing and made it a drag, a literal one in Vox's wretched case. My position on Baldur's Gate 3 is that I won't save scum except for a hell of a lot of exceptions. Or I'll always save scum except for a hell of a lot of exceptions. Not sure which is more accurate at this point, but the point is that there are a hell of a lot of exceptions, because that's how I'm having fun with Baldur's Gate 3, committing to the risk where doing so is heightening the tension in a way that's enjoyable, but having a do-over without shame or embarrassment if it means I don't miss out on petting an owlbear or getting that weird fucked up doctor to get his own to have to gory fucking p***s. God, that scene was so fucking amazing. And I'd have hated to be cheated out of it because I rolled a fucking 3 with advantage. Those last points are why Nicole in the Polygon article said save scumming is the best way to play RPGs. These things can be dozens, even hundreds of hours long, and some people just want to see everything. They want to see every outcome, experience every facet of a game, and they don't want to have to replay an 80+ hour adventure multiple times to do it. I think that's incredibly fair, especially considering these are ultimately products we've paid good money for. What I'm trying to say is, it's Baldur King. Have it your way.
Any way you think is proper, have it your way.
Now that's the way to do things.
Have it your way. Have it your way.
It's the extra poo that makes all the difference.
Great video, Stephanie. Thanks. Goodbye, everybody. Before we go, just a quick plug, because if you can get to Leeds on Saturday, August 26th, this coming weekend, do it. At Leeds, True Grit Wrestling, August 26th, it's finally here. Commander Sterling versus Kid Bandit. And the sweetener is, it's no DQ. Now, if you've seen me in a no DQ situation, you know exactly how brutal, how violent, how tacky I can get. I mean, obviously you can see how tacky I get. Tits. Big uns. Thank God for me.